Welcome everybody to the 25th video in our top-down game programming series, and in this video we're going to be looking at the game camera. So in essence, after this video we'll be able to create a game camera that will be able to move around the world, and so we'll be able to move around the map, explore new maps and all that stuff, explore our map. The camera won't be able to go over the edges and it won't be displaying black stuff. And yeah, so we're gonna have something working like this thing where the camera just follows around the player. And yeah, so guys, stick around throughout the full tutorial video to know the do's and the don'ts when creating a game camera. So yeah guys, and before we begin, I want to thank Human123. He was the first one to join the Discord server, and I'm really grateful for the support. And yeah, so yeah, shout out Human123. I do not know what the YouTube username is, but you can comment down below. And yeah guys, so let's get started. So this tutorial series we're going to be finishing up the camera and all this stuff, because I saw the previous video was going to be another hour-long video and I didn't want that. So yeah, so the first thing is I finally figured out why it was doing that. Well, the reason being is inside our render and our render method we're centering objects around the center. As you can see, when we draw stuff, we were drawing it about the center. So I had to do a lot of debugging, lots of system data, print line statements to see what's happening. I even had to open up the Photoshop map to know my bearing. And yeah, so basically what's happening, let me remove all the stuff that I added. So with this renderer, I was taking instead of taking this position, let me open up Photoshop. So instead of taking this position 0 and 0 as the start of the world, or as the world start point, as the coordinate, I was taking the midpoint of the world as the starting point, as position 0 and 0. So what that means is that if we go up, then we're reducing in y values. If we go down, then if we're on this point, the exact center of the let me just use paint. So yeah, so let's go and clear everything. So basically what I was using was so this is our world. So what I was using, I thought I was using this as my 0 and 0. This is my origin of the world, 0 and 0. What I was using the midpoint of the world. So on a Cartesian, that's a really poor Cartesian plane. So let me just go to home, create a line, there we go. So on a Cartesian plane, so now this, you see this, where these two lines meet is basically the center of my world. So this is position 0 and 0, meaning if I go on negative, this side will be minus x values, this side will be positive x values, and all this stuff. So I was basically working on the principles that this was my origin, but actually how I coded it was that the origin of the world is the center, which I'm fine with. So we just need to adapt to that. So yeah, so this is my center. So when we previously ran the project, this is what is happening. Okay, not this per se. That was because I changed a few stuff. I don't even remember what I changed. Oh yeah, it's because if you go to the scene, what's the scene? I reset the camera's position to 0, as you can see, 0, meaning that this will be at the exact center of the world. So as you can see, now if I run the program and run it, and let's just compare it to a Photoshop file and press enter, as you can see, this position, so the starting position is over here. So this is the 0 position, which is if I go to Photoshop and look at position half of the world, which is 1500, the midpoint of the world is basically the starting position. So basically, using the ruler tool, I
got 750 and 750 there. So this is where, somewhere around this point where my mouse currently is. This is the midpoint of the world. That's the origin of the world and the midpoint of the world. And when I enter here, as you can see, the close reference, this and this, as you can see the reference, so this is the midpoint of the world. So this is coordinate 0 and 0. So this is currently where the camera is at. But I want position 0 and 0 to be at the center of the screen. So to do that, we're going to be using the camera's viewpoint and inside the renderer. So what we're going to do, we're just going to be adding the width, camera viewpoints width, camera dot vp width. No, this is height, right? Height. We're going to be adding half of the value because we want the center to be the exact center, plus camera dot vp width divided by 2. And when we run this and press enter, and there we go. Now this, as you can see, this is the center of our world somewhere. The camera shows that this is the center, and there we go. So if we enter this, where should we go? And enter Photoshop and look at this thing. As you can see, there, that is the center. That is the center. So there was no mistakes, just that I was being ignorant. And yeah. Now the other thing is, when all this stuff was going on, so I went ahead into the camera and I added an update method. So just copy all this down, or copy all this code down. So this is basically to move the camera around. I wanted to be able to move the camera around while I'm playing. So now if we run this, enter, when we're moving the W and S D keys, the camera kind of moves around. It pans around the view. So yeah. And so that's something else that you can add. But I'm just going to remove this feature now. And what else do we do? We could, now if you add the player, I'm going to put the player at the exact center of the world now. I don't need to do all of this. I can just put 0 and 0, put the player at 0 and 0. And if we run it, we're going to see the player at the exact center of the screen. There we go. But the rotation thing isn't going to work. We're going to fix that later. That has got to do with the what is it called, the screen space, no, whatever, the screen space, how do I say this, screen space coordinates and all of that nice stuff. So yeah. So yes, now we have our player working. We need to now as you can see, when we move the player, everything's working fine. We're still not wandering around when the player leaves the camera, the scene. The camera's still not following the player. So that's one of the problems. Yeah. So that's what we're going to be fixing in this video. And let me just remove this to show you guys. And I need to disable the players. I need to disable the players and manage input script. So yeah. And enter. And as you can see, when we're moving the camera around, the player stays in place and we're just panning around the scene. Now, what else do we need to fix? I think that's about it. Now, what do we need to do? Is basically create a function with the player for the camera, and we're gonna make it center on a game object. So inside here, I will create a new function and I'll call it public void center on game object, and it's going to take in a game object. It's going to take in a game object. Object is a parameter object, and what's going to go into that function is simple. We're just simply going to say position is equal to object dot position. But this is going to be giving us problems, so I need to go to the vector class. It will give us problems, I assure you it will. That's due to, because in programming languages, when you just copy down when you copy objects, it's just gonna instead of assigning new objects, it's going to just copy the I don't know how to explain this, but it's just gonna copy the resource, the location, the memory location inside the RAM. It's not gonna create a new copy, and we need a new copy for the camera object, and those all this yada 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 yada. So basically, whenever we do something funky with the player, the camera is also going to be affected. So we need to change that. So to do that, we're gonna go to the math function, to the math class, to the math, and go to vector2f, and I'll create a new method, and I'm gonna call it clone public void public vector2f clone, and it's gonna return a new vector copy of the same class. So we're just gonna simply return new vector2f and there we go. This should be fresh, and we're just simply gonna say .get position .clone, and there we go. So now if we run this, what are we running? We didn't even call this function. So yeah, so we're gonna get into the gameplay scene. Now before we do that, we're going to add a new method inside here. I'll call it public void get game object by name so it's going to take a string name, and it's not going to be void, it's going to be returning a game object, and we're going to simply say return not yet. So we're going to say game objects. So we're gonna create an empty game object, and let's call it temp equals to now, and we're just basically gonna search for this. We're going to simply search for this. We're going to be searching this list for a game object that has the same name, that name. So we're going to be getting the game object. So yeah, so I'm simply gonna say return temp, and inside here we're gonna say for. Here I'm going to be using for each loop just because it's faster, and I'm going to say if game object dot name get name dot equals game object, then we're going to simply say temp is equal to game object. So yeah, so you're probably wondering what is a for each loop. So a for each loop basically is it's a type of for loop that iterates or loops through objects that are within a list. And it's quite simple actually. Just gonna write game object, the name of the game object. So basically it's gonna represent this game object, and then here it's going to, after the before the semicolon, you're going to first of all specify the type of list that you're going to be iterating through. So we're going to be iterating through a list full of game objects, and what are we going to represent an index. So this is a variable name of an index, the index of each iteration of each loop iteration. So yeah, of each game object in each loop iteration, and this is basically the list of game objects, which is this. So yeah, and you're probably wondering, why didn't you use a for each loop? Why didn't you use this for each loop, something like this over here with the render and all this stuff in the update? The reason we didn't use that is because a for each loop isn't, I don't know how to say it. It's not stable when you have multi-threading. It's not thread safe. So the moment you have what is it called? You're spawning objects while trying to call this function at the same time, it's going to give you an index out of bounds exceptions or something like that. So you're just gonna crash your project. So yeah, so we're just gonna use this over here, and yeah. And now if you go to the whatever is it. Now let's go to a scene class, gameplay, a gameplay scene, and inside here set our update scene function, scene manager to start scene, and before that we simply want to be calling a camera dot up dot center and dot center on game object, and before that we're going to be creating a game object, a target game object. I'll name it target, camera target, and import this, yada yada yada. Yes. So, and inside here we're just going to say camera target, launch it right after initializing all this stuff, update scenes. We're simply going to say, after here, simply going to say camera target is equal to find object, get object by name, and there we go. And for the name of the object, we're going to call it, we're going to look for a player. I think that's the name of the player, right? I'm not sure, so let's go back and check for the player. Where's the player class? Side entities, player. What's the name of the object? So we didn't set a name for the player, so inside init I'm just going to say name is equal to player, and when we go here, and now when we run this, oh yeah, I forgot what we disabled the input management. Now we just gotta enable it, run it. And we're running it, and yes, press enter. Okay, for some reason it's not working. I have no clue why. Let's go to the gameplay scene. So one of the mistake I made, the first mistake I made was inside the get game object by name method, instead of comparing the game object and get name method with the name passed in as the parameter, I was basically comparing it against the game object. So that's the first mistake I had that made sure that it wasn't running. Now the other mistake I made was inside the gameplay scene, instead of centering on the camera target, I was centering on the scene object. So, and since the scene wasn't moving, when we move the player, the game camera doesn't move because it's centering on the scene and not centering on the player. Camera target. And when I remove this, and when I run this again, it should work. And there we go. Now we see the camera is moving and following the player and all that stuff. Now we have some black void, some blackness and all that. And there we go. So now the camera is following the player. Now the other problem we have is that the moment the camera reaches the what is it called? The end. So the moment we what's it called? We're going out of this. The camera isn't moving blank space. It's like I don't know. It's not like we shouldn't be seeing outside of the map. We should only see to a specified bounds. So basically, we need to do that. So we need to fix the camera's bounds, and that's the first thing that we need to do. So yeah. So to fix the camera's bounds, we are going to enter the camera class, and inside the center and game object, So I don't need this anymore. I was doing all those systems that are print statements or for debugging and stuff. Let me see if I moved every single last one of them. Yes, I did. Now we simply just need to so let me just move the player to a position like 700 and 700, 700, 700. Where's that? Where's the player? Where's the gameplay scene? And let's change this to 700 and 700 for the player. Player. Okay, from an x of minus 700. Minus 700, 700. I think that should be close enough to the edge. Yes, it's close enough to the edge. So we need to remove this, so we need to add code to fix that. So basically the logic, how the logic runs is, let me press enter to continue, is simple. If the offset, if the camera, so basically, how do I do this? So basically if the offset, if the camera offset, I don't know, we're going to need to have to display the camera's position, the camera's X position, where's the camera, display position. So position, there we go. Now basically what we need to say is if the camera is whatever units, what's the width? If the camera is at this position here, which is half of the width, basically if the camera is at half of the width, if the camera's X position is this, if the camera's X position is half of the screen's width, that means that it shouldn't be there, because we're going to see the what's called the black lines. So let's just fix this. Let's just try and fix one thing at a time. So yeah, so private void maintain bounds. I don't know how to call this method. Remove black spaces. Okay, remove black spaces. So simply we're going to say if position.x is smaller than half of the width, VP width, divide that by 2, then we're going to simply say position.x should equal to VP width, not height, width. There we go. Change that W to capital, and there we go. Equals to VP width divided by 2. Now let's test that if it's running, and let's enter. Still not. Oh, I didn't call the method. Wow. Should always call the method. So remove black spaces. Okay. Is smaller than minus. Smaller or equal to, I don't know, why is it not working? Minus width is bigger than, maybe the size is a mess. Okay, it's not working, but it needs to be somewhere here. Okay, let me just simply display this. Let's start the position, and let's run. So what this means is basically the camera cannot be at the edge. The camera's position can't be at the edge of the world, because if it's at the edge of the world, we're getting something like if it's at 700 minus 750, which is the edge of the world, it's basically showing the world. What it should be, however, it should be on something like this amount, which is basically half the viewpoint width, the edge of the world, the size, the direction of the edge of the world, half of the basically the half of the size of the edge of the world minus the direction viewpoint or whatever. So yeah, minus half the viewport width. So yeah, now what we need to do is need to get that edge of the world value. So inside the scene, public float we're going to have width height, and this would basically take in the scene's width and scene's height. So we're just gonna have to set that inside the scenes specifically, and we're going to do that inside the scene class. So over here, we're going to simply just call the set camera function. This is the camera, and we also need to say camera dot width is equal to width, and camera dot height is also equal to height. As if we're changing the scene camera, that's one thing. The other place that we need to set this is inside the initialize method, and I can't find it. Let me quickly zoom out to find it. Scene, start scene. Okay, inside the start scene, we're going to say render the set camera to this camera, and the other thing we need to say, yes, I think this is about it. But yeah, so this will work. Now let's go to the camera class. Now that we have that, now we need to get the half of the width. So simply here, inside here, remove black spaces. So yeah, I'm going to create new floats variables, and I'll just call them x, half x. I'm just going to call them half width, and half height. IGHT. There we go. And I'm going to simply say half width is equal to width divided by 2. Do I even need to do that? To go and check width divided by 2. And half height is equal to height divided by 2. Now what do we simply do now? Our condition simply says, instead of this, we're going to say if half width minus, okay, so we're checking for the left side, so we're going to simply say if position.x is smaller than minus half width smaller than minus half width. So if that is smaller than minus half width and bigger than minus half width plus half of the VP width divided by 2, then we're going to set the position to we're going to simply set the position to this, Control C and Control V, and this hopefully should work. Okay, for some reason doesn't want to work. I don't know why. So inside this code, I should just simply display that we're at the edge. We are at the edge. Okay, so it's still saying we're at the edge. We're at the edge. okay, so it's positioned at x smaller than minus half width. Let me just display what's minus half width first, because I think we're getting something. So I'm gonna be back again. So yeah, so I figured out the problem. The problem is because we didn't put this code. We just put it inside the render.sig camera, and that's it. So I fixed that. So we just copied this code: camera width equals to width, camera height is equal to height. And then now if we go into the camera scene, into the camera view, and when we remove all of this and set this, now if we run it, hopefully it works. There we go. There we go. There we go. So we limit the left right. We limited the left side of the left corner of the screen. As you can see, it's working perfectly, like some sort of charm. And now what we need to do is limit the top side of the screen. So now it's going to be a piece of cake. So we're just going to do this top side. So this is the left side of the screen, left side, and now we have to do the top side. Top side. Piece of cake is going to be a piece of cake. I'm just going to have to copy and paste. Control C, Control V, position the Y, change all these X's to Y's. Okay, some sort of problem. Okay, I set positioned at X instead of positioned at Y. Now let's run this. There we go. Now the top corners and the top and the bottom side and the left side is fixed. Now we just need to fix the right side. So let's go to the gameplay and put the player at position 700. So minus 700, let's put him at 700 and let's run it. So we're going to try and fix this side next. So we're going to go to the camera and we're going to copy this code. But the code is going to be slightly different this time. So, and I'm going to name this right side. Right. Probably wondering how different might it be. The difference is that we're on the right side now. So instead of it being negative, we're just going to be swapping the signs around. Instead of it being negative, we're going to make it positive half width, and instead of plus, we're just going to change the signs to minus. So make this positive, minus, and negative. Now when we run this thing, it should work. Still not working. I have no idea why. It's snapping the other way around. Oh yeah, I forgot to change this to this way. The greater than sign. So if positioned at X. And there we go. We have the top side fixed. The right side is fixed. And all we have left is the bottom side. And there we go. Now we need to fix that. Now we just have to fix the bottom side, and to do that, I'm just gonna copy this. Control C. I'll name this bottom side, bottom. There we go, bottom side, and position the Y. Change the signs. Change this sign, and this sign, and this to a minus, this to a minus, and now when we run this, And there we go. So guys, we finished with the camera class, and yeah, so that's it everybody. So guys, yeah, peace. Thanks for watching. Peace. If you like, subscribe. Don't miss out on the new updates. And yeah, that's all it. Now in the next video we're going to be fixing the rotation of the player. We're going to be fixing the rotation of the player, and yeah, so that it can rotate again. And yes,